PAAC Friday tip-off. It is tip-off, but it's the Friday edition. We're going to try this. We're kind of evolving. Here's the idea, is that on Fridays, I always want to take your questions to interact with you. Fridays, I want to reveal PAAC, which is much better visually than it is auditorily. So we'll do a video cast on Fridays. Everything else will probably just be audio only along the way. I'm David Locke, radio voice of Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Glad to have you with us. For those of you that are new to this, the way it works is we generally do this little podcast thing that we enjoy every single day for you, Monday through Friday, and then along the way we talk about the Jazz, we talk about the NBA, we just kind of hang out every morning and have a cup of coffee, and you might have a Red Bull or a Mountain Dew or something like that, and we do this for you. So the idea here on these Fridays is to send me your questions if you want to know about your team's PAAC, if you want to know about your favorite players' PAAC, if you want to know about in the league, whatever it might be. I'm sending a tweet right now. That's part of the delay. Sorry, I'm just sending out get this thing going. And so you just jump in, and that's what we'll do Fridays. And so the interaction's important. You can also click it over to me and send it to me on the Twitter thing at Locked On Sports, and I'll check those during the broadcast. So that's how it works. That's the plan. Let me quickly just check a few things, Jazz, NBA 5 related to start it off. NBA 5 related, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but we should really be taking a little notice of what San Antonio's doing. Last night, the Spurs had another remarkable game. Their defense is historically great right now. They are not quite as historically great offensively as defensively as the Warriors are offensively, but they are crushing people. Held Memphis to 83 points. Kawhi Leonard took 9 threes last night. He's over 50% from 3 for the season. We'll talk about his value in PAAC here in a second, but he might be the second best player in the NBA right now. Last night he hit 7 of 9 from 3. And Memphis, who is still kind of searching a little bit, has moved Jeff Green in the starting lineup, but is playing a little bit better. They just got crushed, 103-83. If you're Memphis, though, let's keep an eye on it. They've lost by the Warriors to 50 and Spurs by 20. It's hard to stay motivated when that happens. Oklahoma City is 11-8. Shouldn't they be better than that? Last night they lost to Miami, who goes to 11-6. The East keeps beating the West, though Denver beat Toronto last night. Not quite sure what to take on that. The Thunder need Durant to shoot more threes, though he had 25, 9, and 5. He still actually needs to shoot more threes because nobody else on their roster is letting him fly that way. Miami, who's so good at taking those away, held them to 4 of 16 last night. Wade had 28 last night. Miami's at relatively full strength again and showed that they can beat just about anyone in the league. Josh McRoberts got rolling a little bit in that one. So interesting to see there. From a Jazz standpoint, Orlando played the defense that the Jazz are hoping to play. They shut down the Jazz, holding them to 37 points in the second half of that game. Overshifting, Jazz having a hard time dealing with it. Really weren't offensively able to get going. Defensively, without Rudy, it's not the same, and they were able to kind of get to the rim a little bit better. But really rewatching the second half, this one's self-inflicted. I'm not going to go make a larger statement yet about the Jazz without Rudy. This was self-inflicted. Really sloppy, terrible passing, awful transition defense at times. Just a lack of attention to detail by a Jazz team that usually is very good at that. So before we make a statement that this is a case of the Jazz not being able to play without Rudy, there were enough things in this game that had they done better, they would have been able to fix it. Gordon had an incredible first quarter, then was not as impactful in the second quarter, and in the second half. And watching it, I was trying to figure out, is that on Gordon? Was that on the offense? A lot of dribbling by Alec. A lot of dribbling by Rodney. Maybe that's part of it. Not sure. hard to see. I didn't think Gordon was as engaged. I didn't think Gordon was as physical. But there were plenty of times where he made the right play, where he drives and there's 12 guys around, it feels like, and he dishes it off. Rodney Hood did not have a good game, and he seems to be the bellwether of this team right now, shooting. And Howell Neto's turnovers in the third quarter were tough. So I'm not going to go far enough right now to say that I thought last night was an indictment of where the Jazz are going to be without Rudy Gobert, because I think that if you look at that game, they really, a lot of self-inflicted wounds along the way. All right, let's get to PAAC, and then I'll open up to your questions. So let's do a little screen share. And here we are. Share. So Steph Curry is still leading the league in PAAC at 7.7, which is just an incredible number. And let me see if I can dig into this. So for those of you that are new to PAAC, PAAC is points above average created. So Steph is using 22.9 scoring opportunities a game. If the average player in the league used 22.9 scoring opportunities a game, Steph would they would score 7.7 points less than Steph. If you look here, there are only 8 players in the league that have a PAAC above 2. Which, now start to think about this for a second. Steph Curry is 3 times more impactful on a game than all players other than Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard. This is why the Warriors can't lose. His true shooting percentage is 70%. Fact is that Kevin Durant is having one of the great offensive seasons in the league, and it's not even being noticed. And here's part 2 on the Warriors. Many of you who have done this with me before are probably going to know where I'm going to head here. But here's what then separates the Warriors. So Steph Curry is 7.7. He's 5 points better than almost everyone else in the league. And now look at who the Warriors play. This is anybody who plays more than 15 minutes a night, and I could up this a little bit. That was kind of my general filter. But if we went to go to 12 minutes a night, doesn't actually change. Only Leandro Barbosa is using a possession below the league average. So Steph is at 7.7. And then when you try to get the ball out of Steph's hands, you're still getting players that are above average. You just can't catch up to them. It's why they've won 20 in a row, quite simply. You can't catch up to them. Durant is second best. Kawhi Leonard having an amazing year, third. Paul George, fourth. CJ Miles, 5th. Dirk Nowitzki, 6th. Russell Westbrook, 7th best. The Thunder shouldn't be losing. Let's dig into the Thunder here for a second. See, how can the Thunder, with 2 of the top offensive players in the game, Durant and Westbrook, are giving the Thunder the same thing as Steph Curry. The minute the ball goes to Morrow, Ibaka, Waiters, Singler, they're below average. Interesting on Ibaka. Serge Ibaka has become a below-average offensive player in the NBA. Stunning. He's only going to the free throw line 4% of his possessions, only using 9% of his possessions to shoot a 3. Very surprising. Cantor having a great offensive year, as we'd expect. Steven Adams. But there's a lot of negative here. Kyle Singler, Dion Waiters, Serge Ibaka, Anthony Morrow. It's interesting. Waiters is causing the negative impact on the Thunder. Ennis's least offense is giving them something. If you have a question about your team, you're welcome to ask it. Send it to @LockedOnSports, or you can throw it up in the question area as well. Lowry comes in at 8th. Heinrich, who's played limited, it shows you the value of him at 9th. Blake Griffin, Kevin Love, J.J. Redick, James Harden is circled back around, Tony Parker, Kyle Korver, off from where he was a year ago, though. Korver was, I think, the 3rd best player in the league last year. For those who need a reference point, last year, James Harden was 3rd, but Kyle Korver was the 4th best player in the league last year. CJ Miles is this year's Kyle Korver. Everyone wants to know, how did Atlanta win 60 games last year and do all this stuff? And Kyle Korver was a 2.9. Well, here's C.J. Miles at 2.4. Everyone's trying to figure out how Indiana's doing it. C.J. Miles is a huge part of it. C.J. Miles is playing the Kyle Korver role. When you are try to put this in perspective a little bit. When you're 2.4 above average, the other team has to make up those points. And I'm showing you here that there aren't many guys that are that far above average. Antetokounmpo has cooled off a little bit. Bledsoe, Cantor, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala. Suddenly the Warriors have a bunch of guys here. Klay Thompson's usually in it. Jimmy Butler, Jonas Valanciunas, Hassan Whiteside, Kenneth Faried, Mo Williams all having good years. Jared Dudley, big loss for Milwaukee. Here's LeBron. Andrew Bogut's, even Anthony Davis. Interesting. Bogut's using 5 possessions a game because he's shooting 70%. He's having as big an offensive impact as Anthony Davis, who's become such a mid-range player. Here's Favors at 1.3, who leads the Jazz. Flip it around. Let's find out who the worst in the league are. Then we'll look at the Jazz, and then I'll take your questions. Norris Cole right now is the worst offensive player in the league, or least impactful. Kobe is second. No surprise. Emmanuel Mudiay is third. Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Mudiay, and Kobe Bryant are all. Norris Cole's played very little. Markieff Morris in Phoenix, really interesting. He's just having an awful year. Alfred Payton, who we saw last night, Sasha Vucevic, Chris Kaman, Nerlens Noel, Joe Johnson in Brooklyn, Corey Brewer, Drew Gooden, Trevor Booker having a huge negative impact on the Jazz. And this is where the Rudy injury really hurts. Randy Foye, Marcus Smart. It's not surprising. Boston's actually playing pretty well without him. They've been blown out. They kind of go. Pau Gasol having a tough year in Chicago. I was surprised I didn't know that. Danny Green struggling. Jameer Nelson in Denver, shooting 3.4% of his possessions at the free throw line. He better make some shots. He's shooting 24% from there. Victor Oladipo, and this is why you have to take Oladipo out of that starting lineup. You can't have both of them together, and Orlando's 5-0 since they've done that. Ricky Rubio, Ishmael Jalil Okafor. So this is where Okafor's putting up big numbers, but he's rarely going to the line. He's shooting 46%. Rondo Aldridge, a negative. Still an even worse of a negative in San Antonio than in Portland. Gerald Green, Kyle Singler, Ty Lawson, J.R. Smith, Stanley Johnson, the rookie, Evan Turner, Caldwell Pope, surprising, but not shooting well. Steve Blake, Nick Stauskas, Joakim Noah, Dwayne Wade. A little surprised to see that. But when you're mid-range and out of free throws, only going to the line 11% of the time. Damari Carroll struggling. Terrence Ross, Julius Randle is negatives. Dennis, that's a bad sign for the Lakers. Raul Neto, despite only using 5 possessions a game, is a full negative 1.2. Jamal Crawford, Lavoy Allen, Vasquez, Raymond Felton, Tony Allen, D'Angelo Russell, O.J. Mayo, Monte Ellis, negative, and Michael Carter-Williams. That's much better for Michael Carter-Williams. You don't see Trey Burke in here, so both of them have improved a significant deal. All right, finally, flip it back around to the good guy. He's on top, and then let's take a look at the Utah Jazz for many of the people here, and then I'll start taking some of your questions of who you want to see and what you want to see. Derek Favors, and I'll clear them. Let me clear. There we go. Derek Favors is at 1.3. Rudy Gobert, 0.9. That's going to hurt. Joe Ingles at 0.7. Gordon Hayward at 0.5. Alec Burks, 0.4. But here's where the Jazz just can't be a good offensive team. You just can't have the majority of your guys using possessions below the league average. I mean, this is pretty horrific. Trey Burke is great compared to where he was a year ago. To compare and contrast, this is a great sign for Trey. Still negative, unfortunately. And my whole theory, by the way, is that only way you win a championship is if you have every guy on your team positive. Trey Burke, it was minus 2.2 last year, is now it's just basically even. Good for Trey. Tibor Pleiss, Jeff Withy. Rodney Hood, minus 0.4 last year, minus 0.1. Second-year player, give him some time. Elijah Millsap, Trey Lyles, Raul Neto, and Trevor Booker. Dante last year was a minus 0.8, so Neto's right around that same area. So Favors at 1.3. Last year, Gobert led at 1.2, Hayward at 1.1, Favors at 0.7. So Favors has gotten much better. 1.3, Hayward's working his way back up. Gordon's taking 21% of his possessions as threes. I would tell you that number needs to to move up to 33, 34, and I think he probably knows as well. All right, let me take some questions. First, from the guys watching live, from Daniel Wooden. I've heard you say that a team should start their 5 best players. With this in mind, should the Jazz change their starting lineup, and if so, to what? So that would just mean you're the reason you care about starters is because they play a lot of minutes together. No 5-man group plays more minutes together than your starters. So that would, there's a legitimate question there. I think that's so. If Alec Burks, Rodney Hood, and Gordon Hayward are really the Jazz best players, and the wings better than Neto, which is yes, should they start? Fair question. I would think you want to have your 5 best players on the floor together as much as possible in the game. And because if you watch substitutions, for example, last night I think the Jazz starters played 14 minutes together, and then the next lineup played 7 minutes together, and that's actually a lot for that second lineup. So I think that's a legitimate question. Good question. Do you think Kobe's end of career will affect salaries moving forward? Even with the new cap, it seems like neither vets nor owners want to be stuck out. Being able to add talent around them seems like could be a negotiating point for the owners. No owner other than the Lakers is silly enough to have signed Kobe to that deal. The Sonics had a similar situation with Gary Payton getting older and they traded him. The Knicks had a similar situation with Patrick Ewing. They traded him. No owner is silly enough to do what the Lakers did. That was just pure insanity. All right, let me check some questions coming in. Let's see. It's hard. This is a problem with doing questions through. I can't tell. Brad Altman says, how about Dirk at his age? Incredible. But I can't tell if that's in response to just a Twitter post or a real question. It may not be. This is where I like to use the hashtag lock tip off or something like that, and I'll have to do that in the future. After the Orlando game, should the Jazz be concerned with Rudy out for an extended period, Magic or hot butt? Well, I mean, the Jazz should be concerned with Rudy out for a period of time, but not necessarily just because not because they lost to Orlando. I mean, I think that you should be concerned just because, frankly, it's disconcerting. I mean, you're playing without Rudy. The Jazz are not going to be as Rudy's very good. You lose Derek, you lose Rudy, you lose Gordon. This team's going to really struggle. It's a significant issue. Let's go look at Miami for a second here today. And they're interesting because they still have a bunch of guys negative, which I didn't think they would this year. I had Miami projected to finish second or third in the East, and they have Justice Winslow, Josh McRoberts, Goran Dragic, Dwayne Wade, Gerald Green, all negative. It's a huge amount of scoring opportunities a game that they're using here that are all negative. And that's concerning if you're Miami. Their defense is great, but that does not lead me to believe that they're nearly the contender that I thought they could be. Let's take a look at Cleveland. Mozgov is about 0. Varejao, Joe Harris doesn't play. Jared Cunningham and J.R. Smith. So J.R. Smith is the one guy that's derailing Cleveland right now. All he's got to do is just get his shooting percentage kind of back up, particularly his 2-point shooting percentage, to a reasonable number. But they have that looks every bit the part of an NBA Finals championship caliber lineup right there. The Spurs does not, because of LaMarcus Aldridge and Danny Green. They're doing it defensively. Atlanta, who's having a surprisingly poor year, should turn it around, but Dennis Schroeder's killing them at minus 1.2. Justin Holiday's playing a little. Kent Bazemore's ankle injury hurt him. He's at 1. Thabo Sefolosha at 0.8. That's actually a pretty nice job of replacing the play of Kyle Korver. The problem is the guys just aren't having as good a year as they had a year ago with Atlanta. If you look at Atlanta, last year you have Kyle Korver. Actually, this is interesting. I didn't realize this. Kyle Korver's at 2.9. I've said numerous times that Atlanta is just completely based on Kyle Korver. Well, here's a good example. Atlanta's at 2.9. Damari's at 1.4. Millsap was a 0.9. Teague was a 0.9. Horford's a 0.8. We flipped this year. Paul Millsap is a 1.3. He's actually playing better. Horford's at 0.8. He's right where he regularly is. They're all, Teague's a little off. Korver's just not as dominant. And 1.5 is a lot. Korver's off by 1.5 of what he was last year because he was historic last year. He's just getting a little older. And he's still having a great year. Over on the West, I mentioned San Antonio doesn't quite come together. You'll see here, San Antonio's got, and Green probably can get it going, but you've got Danny Green, you've got LaMarcus Aldridge using possessions way below league average. This will hurt them. Kawhi Leonard and Tony Parker playing out of their head. Tony Parker's great. 57% shooting by Tony Parker. Who else in the West are they? You wonder what's going on with the Clippers. Right now, it's injuries because they're going to be without J.J. Redick and Chris Paul. Well, you take out J.J. Redick's 1.8 and Chris Paul's 1.2. You're not very good anymore. And then you go to their bench. Lance Stevenson negative, Josh Smith negative, Paul Pierce negative, Austin Rivers negative, Jamal Crawford next was Pablo Prigioni negative. Woo! Makes it tough to live. How about Houston? James Harden, 1.8. Clint Capella, 1.3. They look good up top. Then Terrence Jones, minus 0.6. Ariza, way off from last year. Probably worth comparing where they were last year. Oops. And Trevor Ariza last year was a positive 0.1. But Houston was not a very good offensive team last year, if you remember. Capella's really improved, but they had a huge amount of negatives as well. They were driven by James Harden's 3.2 genius. James Harden at 1.8. That's a 1.5. It's a lot. And what else in the West we should be looking at? The Warriors, obviously running away with it. San Antonio there. So that is your PAAC Friday. Hope you're well. Let me see if there's any other questions that come in and out. Locked on Sports. It did not look as though there were a lot of questions. Nope, does not seem to be. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we'll try to increase our interactions and our questions and our things of that sort on our next few tries. Thanks. Talk to you soon.